Peter, Jim. All right, good evening, everybody. We are recording. Today is October 8th. This is the Goffstown Planning Board. This is our regularly scheduled meeting, our first of the month. Before we begin our meeting, I'm going to go through a right-to-know law meeting checklist that is provided for meetings that are conducted in whole or in part electronically. Due to the COVID-19 outbreak and in accordance with the emergency order, we are authorized to do the meeting this way. You can come here to Town Hall or listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which is authorized. We are providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possible by video or other electronic means. We have a telephone conference line for this electronic meeting. You can listen and participate by dialing 603-766-5646 and using the participant code 785-645, followed by the pound sign, and that gets you into this meeting. We have provided public notice of this information with the posted agenda. We have provided a mechanism for you to alert us if the access electronically for some reason fails. If you have problem with the telephone access, please call 603-660-5000. Finally, if that occurs, we will adjourn the meeting because you're unable to access it, and we'll reschedule for a later date. Votes during this meeting will be done by roll call. And keep in mind that if you're a member from the public and you want to speak, please hit *9 and the operator will recognize you. We do have some members of the public online for some public hearings that we know about, but if you happen to call in while the meeting is in process, hit *9 when the matter that you're interested in talking to is on the agenda, and we will get to you. I am going to ask for everybody to please identify themselves for purposes of roll call, and I'm going to start with everybody in this room, which will include town employees. Joanne, can we start with you?
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
Patty Gale, staff.
Gayla Bruck, alternate and recording secretary.
My name is Barbara Griffin.
Tim Redmond.
David Pierce, an alternate member.
And then online, Peter? Peter?
Is he muted?
He's not muted.
I am here by myself and I'm selectman's rep.
Okay, and your last name would be Georgianis?
That'd be accurate.
Excellent. Jim?
This is Jim Raymond. Actually, my wife is somewhere around here.
All right. Phil?
I'm here and I'm alone.
And your last name would be Devanza?
Last I looked, it was.
Excellent. Is there anybody else who was called into the meeting as an employee or member that I have not called off?
Sarah Wordy, town engineer.
Sarah, thank you. Anybody else?
Well, everyone else is muted.
Okay. And Karen and Kimberly, we had word would not be attending, so David and Gail, you will be voting for this meeting tonight.
Okay.
The first item on the agenda tonight is the minutes of, let's deal with the minutes of our last meeting, which was September 24th. Have individuals had an opportunity to review those? And if so, is there a motion?
Motion to approve is presented.
Is there, there's a second? Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to call for a vote. Tim?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Peter? Jim?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Phil?
Yes.
Try again. Peter?
Yeah.
Okay, the minutes pass.
We didn't
I don't,
hear-
would there's some sort of lag or difficulty hearing you, Peter. I'm not quite sure what's going on, just so you know.
Okay.
The next item is it our August 13th minutes. As you might recall, we had some discussion last meeting in regards to the substance of an issue on those meetings. Joanne, we went back, you took a look at the meeting. Could you bring us up to date on what the meeting said and what happened?
Sure. I took a look at that portion of the video, and there was much discussion going back and forth. Jim was suggesting that the town would have more involvement. And after discussion went back and forth some more, at the end result was Jim had said if the DPW wants not to include it, that was fine with him, basically. However, I do have one thing that I would like to change, because the discussion the discussion at the meeting, which is not included in the minutes, when they were talking about all of this, they
All
were
right,
talking
what page are you on? Okay.
on number 16.
Yep.
They were talking about the maintenance agreement, but they were also talking about the roadway agreement, which is what Jim wanted more information on. So I think we should say, the town shall be notified of any changes to the drainage and roadway maintenance agreements prior to any changes made. Because the roadway agreement is not mentioned in here.
And we did talk about
Yes,
it in the
and it was
context
in
of
the
this
discussion,
discussion.
yeah.
Okay.
And I think not only should the minutes be changed, but the notice of decision, number 16, should be changed to reflect that change, so we can include that as the roadway, and we just explained to the applicant that it was missed when the motion was made.
Discussion, Tim?
So Joanne, if in fact that did happen, that some changes were made and they were approved, then that becomes part of the file as a condition. It doesn't just,
It's
Kinda
not
hang-
just what's here, it's what was also discussed
That's why
during
you want the
meeting.
notice of decision changed.
Correct.
okay, thank you.
It's just a minor change, but in the future, in case anything were to happen, it's good to have it in there.
Thank you. Board members, further comments?
Barbara, this is Jim. I have a question. We can amend an approval, but if we're doing that now, I question how we go back and change the minutes as if it happened then. If it did not, it didn't. So are we amending an approval, or are we going back and saying we meant that, but we didn't say it, or the minutes are incorrect? But you can't revise minutes because now we want to do something different. It kind of destroys the credibility of your minutes.
What was the actual title of the proposed document? Sarah, do you remember?
The drainage maintenance agreement?
Yeah, did it say drainage maintenance agreement, or was there something
It's two separate agreements.
right,
That's what it's always called.
right, but was there a separate agreement that we were also talking about?
For the
in the-
roadway maintenance. Because they were sharing the cost of,
Well, it's gonna be a private road.
All right, so
But
so there were two separate documents that we were talking about?
we have not.
We asked them to have one between themselves.
Right.
And
Town-
I guess the town could get a copy of it, proof that they actually made the agreement. But the road maintenance agreement, we just asked them to work it out amongst themselves and have a document that says, I'm responsible for this, you're responsible for that.
And
We
they,
don't have a template for that, though.
they agreed at the meeting that, in fact, Nick Golan came right out and said, because I had a discussion with him and said, could you please include that? And at the meeting, he said, yes, we've agreed to this and we will make that change.
So the reality is, we're talking about a drainage maintenance agreement and a roadway maintenance agreement.
Right.
Not one document.
Correct. And we have not received that document yet. So, I mean, it's easy enough to work with Nick and have that document provided to us as part of our file. However, we have a handshake with TF Moran at the moment. Even though the board said they would like to see it and he volunteered, oh yes, no problem. I think the confusion was people didn't realize it was a separate document when the motion was made.
Okay.
That's why I'm just trying to clear that up, not trying to change anything, just
So,
adding what was discussed and agreed to.
Okay, so Tim,
so do we have a stake as a planning board in the roadway maintenance agreement?
Well, the thing that was discussed at that meeting was, the board wanted to make sure that if the applicant didn't maintain the road to some degree, that if, for an example, if the fire department had to get in there, that, truck would be able to travel over that private road and not, that would be an issue because the road was all crumbled or something. I seriously doubt that would ever happen, because this is a private road to two potential businesses, but you never know.
So to follow up on my question then, Joanne, if the road maintenance agreement is a handshake at this point, should that hold up signing the plans?
Well, the plans won't be signed until we have all of the documents, and we don't have that one. And there's other things that were on there, as you can see, there's a list of things.
Fine.
We don't have anything yet.
Fine, thank you.
so it's your position that changing this to drainage maintenance agreement and roadway maintenance agreement is consistent with what we spoke of and consistent with what the applicant agreed to?
Correct.
Okay. I think I understand it better now that you refreshed our recollection that it was two separate documents, because I thought that there were different parties to it.
So I don't think Jim's questions have been answered yet at this point. Are we amending the minutes? Are we changing the minutes? What are we doing?
I think you're just clarifying what was said, so you're correcting the minutes.
I thought, Jim, your comment was more of the way it was initially explained. It wasn't clear that we actually discussed it. The way I understand it now, we did, and that actually is my recollection as to how the discussion happened. Do you have any recollection of it?
My recollection is different, but I'll defer to yours. My recollection is when you made the comment to Joanne that the condition should include that it be either reviewed, but no requirement for the agreement to come back if it was later amended, and that's what was incorporated into the minutes, the approval. I don't recall anything beyond that, so that's why I'm going to defer to your record. When I made the suggestion during the meeting. If you recall it differently,
Well, the roadway maintenance agreement was a separate document that we were talking about, that we sort of settled on us being notified of any changes.
No, that's correct.
Okay.
I'm not that
All right,
document,
okay.
other document.
So the issue was the changes to the drainage maintenance agreement. Okay,
Yeah, however you want to get there.
okay. Well, that's sort of my recollection of how the discussion went down. The problem with minutes is, of course, they're a blend between they're not quite a transcription and they're not a complete summary. Tim?
But I did write a note down in my book here that there was a private maintenance agreement that TF Moran was gonna create the document for it. So that did get discussed to some degree.
And he actually came out and said that we spoke and that the owner had no problem with providing that.
So it did happen.
Yep.
So do we need a motion to approve amended minutes, Joanne?
I think she wants them amended because she'd like the notice of decision amended to reflect the fact that there are two separate documents that we're supposed to get notified on.
So in the motion, we can include your language to be included in the minutes when you give it to Gail, so she could actually write down what it is. Make a motion to amend the August 13th, 2020 minutes to include comments from the planning director, which will be given to the recording secretary to add to the record, even though we don't have all of the exact wording at this time.
Is there Peter has seconded. Is there any further discussion? I'm going to call for a vote. Tim?
Yes?
David?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
I vote yes. Phil?
Yes.
Thank you. So the August 13th minutes have been approved. We have a letter from, I think it's LQO Properties in regards to their application, withdrawing it.
Says QCA Properties on the new business.
It's CQA.
Yeah, it's like different, it's like different letters everywhere.
CO, okay. CQA.
Okay, Joanne?
So, this is the property on Sudeca Lane off of Knollcrest and Mountain Road that is currently a rental units. And the owner is looking to sell, and the new owner would like to convert them into condominiums. And they were going ahead and they were ready to do that. However, there was some kind of a mix-up about, they have underground tanks for their propane, and there was some sort of a mix-up about how they were going to divide those because they want to turn this into a condominium. So I believe the owner is still going forward with the sale, and then the new owner will come back and convert them into a condominium.
Okay, so this is in fact the last item of new business. It's a piece of correspondence that we received. It's in regards to map 29, lot 62-1. And this is being withdrawn and will come forward with a new applicant with new notices to abutters. Is that correct?
It's just for information only at this point.
All right, and we, if they're withdrawing it, we haven't accepted it, so this is now off the agenda, correct? No action is needed. Okay, thank you. We have a report.
Just might want to clarify that it's been withdrawn, because I have two abutters on, I have no idea what they're for.
Oh, all right. So the application for the living units, for the 10 multifamily units that are off of Mountain Road on Knollcrest Road and Sudoku Lane has been withdrawn. We are not going to hear anything in regards to that application tonight, and in fact, we are supposing going to be receiving a new application, at which time all abutters will be notified and it will be reposted as an item of new business on our agenda. We have a report from Connor Liva.
Do we know who that is?
Yes, we do.
Sitting right there.
If it's all right with you, Connor, I'm gonna deal with one more continuance before we get to that. And we have an application on for tonight. But we do have a letter that we have received dated today in regards to a continuance from October 8th to October 22nd. Joanne, you want to address that?
Yes, staff reviewed this application once again.
This is on our agenda as old business, map 3, lots 32A, 32A1, and map, in regards to a plan, a site plan review, and a lot line adjustment, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So staff reviewed this plan again and found that the site plan was not ready to go forward. It was missing many items, and the lot line adjustment still has some questions about the driveway and the access. So they decided that they would prefer to withdraw and come back at a later date. They were supposed to drop off revised plans this afternoon, but I talked to Earl late in the day, and he's going to come by tomorrow. We haven't received any revised plans at all since they first submitted last fall. So there's a lot of items that need to be addressed. Sarah and I talked about it, and we don't really think that's going to happen by the meeting of the 22nd, because we have to have the comments in the mail to the board members the Thursday before, which only leaves a few days for reviews. So we would recommend that either the board continue this to a date uncertain, because I also suggested to Earl, after Sarah and I have had a chance to review, that we sit down with Earl and really go over everything, because this has been dragging on for a long time. Or that you continue it to November 12th with the possibility of it being continued. depending on how the plans are.
Okay, I am actually going to step down from further discussion on this. I brought it up as an agenda item. The applicant has asked that I step down from this due to what the applicant perceives as a potential conflict. I'm not going to contest it, and I am going to recuse myself, given that the item of discussion is a continuance. I'm not removing myself from the table, and I've asked Tim to take over the discussion on this item. Tim?
Thank you, Barbara. So Joanne, I have a question for you. Is this the site that had the discussion about a possible Class 6 road on the site?
Yes.
And has it been determined what the disposition of that road is?
No, it's been fairly determined that it definitely has to go to town meeting to discontinue that road permanently.
Does or does?
Does. And that will happen, that can't happen, obviously, until March. But they are going to be meeting with the select board. I don't know if there's a date. Derek has been in discussion with the owner.
Yeah. Tim, I'm sorry, you say yep.
Yeah, there.
Sorry, Derek Horn, Town Administrator.
Keep
We
quiet.
have been in contact with the consulting firm that's working with the application. We did find out that the section of Kennedy Hill Road that we believe to be going through the property was closed, subject to gates and bars. Working with them, we are now working with them to give them suggested warrant language, and we will be putting them on a select board upcoming agenda. We have not selected a date yet, to make that request to the select board, that the select board put that on the warrant for town meeting in 2021 to permanently discontinue that road. So we are aware of that. We're working with the applicant on that matter.
So my question for you, Joanne, is it premature to consider anything at this site until that issue has been resolved?
Well, there's two things here. So I did speak with Derek about that, and the board could approve this eventually with the condition that they receive town meeting approval for the discontinuation of Kennedy Hill, or a portion of Kennedy Hill. That's one thing. Then today, we received a notice from the owner of the property where the right-of-way goes through, that paperwork has been filed with the court to quiet title and relinquish that right-of-way. So I haven't seen the paperwork yet. I don't know exactly what it says, but
No.
I don't know. I was hoping to get an answer from one of the attorneys if, can the planning board continue to review this application with that court case now?
Well, I don't know about the court case, Joanne, but I do know there's law, RSA statute, that is directly germane to discontinuance of any town road.
Correct.
And that is,
Yep.
I don't know anything about giving up property rights or any of that. I've never read that in the book, but I do know that there's a specific procedure which Derek has described.
Yes, I've read
Requires a
that.
town vote.
Yep.
So once again, I'm asking, should we be continuing to discuss this application before they have a determination on the town road? What if it gets voted down at the town meeting for some unknown reason, and we've gone through all these motions for nothing?
Well, like I said, you could make your approval contingent on town meeting approval. That would be an option for you to do.
Sure.
May I be heard on this?
Jim?
Yes, Jim, please.
We can't prevent an applicant from filing an application with us. It's what we do with it. They've asked for a continuance, so that's what's before us now. I know that if you look at Sarah's write-up of DPW, there were a number of items that weren't furnished that are required by our subdivision and site plan regulations on drainage aspects particularly. So I was going to recommend that we find the application is not complete anyway. It's premature even if they didn't ask for a continuance for it to come before us. I think we've learned we should not be accepting applications that aren't complete, and that means with the information required by our regulations. This one did not. They've chosen not to go forward, but there's still a lot of work to be done. So I suggest we grant a continuance, but to a date uncertain, and you can convey to them, don't come back until you're really ready, because this has taken up far too much time already with coming before us and being continued, and I don't want to see it again until it's done.
Jim,
They
would,
can then decide how they want to deal with the road discontinuance, but I'm going to let them decide that. I don't think we can, because, again, they can come before us at any time.
is
So I
there,
would just continue it to a date uncertain at this point.
is there any other discussion from board members? Jim, could you put that in the form of a motion, and would you think you should add renoticing to the motion?
Well, that's part of it, and it's just, if it's a date uncertain, they have to notice, but we can put that in motion. I move that we grant the applicant's request to continue, but it is continued to a date uncertain, not the date requested by the applicant, and that the applicant should notify planning department when it wishes to come forward, and the hearings will be renoticed.
Okay, I got a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Phil. Any other discussion on the motion? Have a roll call vote. David?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes, yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Chair votes yes.
Thank you. Before we get into the one item of new business that we have a report from Connor Liva of AmeriCorps regarding accessory dwelling units. This was received by all of us. Come on down. Welcome. And Connor's going to present what he's found here.
Well, thank you for having me, everyone. My name is Connor. I work with AmeriCorps Vista. It's a pleasure for you to allow me to be here today and meet with you all, and thank you for those of you on the phone. So I'm working with the town of Goffstown as an AmeriCorps Volunteers in Service to America, or VISTA for short.
Can I just ask them if they could hear you? Can everyone on the phone hear Connor?
I can hear him.
Yes, I can hear.
Okay.
Awesome, good news. So my AmeriCorps mandate is working with different town departments and nonprofits to improve the lives of seniors within the town of Goffstown. And this is particularly important in 2020 with, as we all know, a year of unprecedented uncertainty and risk in both the health and economic worlds. Back in 2018, the town conducted a needs assessment with AARP in order to become a livable community for seniors. The top issue that was identified during that process was the need for assistance to age in place in Goffstown. Many people were being priced out of the town and forced to sell and move out of the homes they lived in for decades. Contrary to popular belief, many people don't actually move to the south when they retire. Fewer than 5% of the 65 and over population reside in nursing homes. Instead, most Americans choose to age in place, meaning they live where they are. Since 2018, housing prices in southern New Hampshire have continued to rapid rise along with construction costs. Rising costs don't just affect seniors, it also affects the town through a reduction of first-time home buyers and prices recent graduates and new home buyers out. It was estimated then that 55% of households in town pay over 30% in housing costs alone, which, according to the federal government, is a cost-burdened expenditure. Goffstown isn't the only town in the state or the country with these issues. Nationally, the price of housing has risen dramatically, forcing families to consolidate. In July 2020, 52% of young Americans aged 18 to 29 are living at home. The number was last seen that high during the Great Depression. Between February 2020 and July 2020, there was a 5% increase in those living with their parents, which is the fastest rise since the 2008 crisis. At the opposite end of the spectrum, many elderly citizens have been moving in with their adult children to reduce cost of living and be closer to family. All this has resulted in part due to lack of inventory and high prices in the real estate market, especially in single-family housing and multifamily units. Luckily, there's an easy and low-impact solution to solve both of these problems. Accessory dwelling units, or ADUs for short, as I'm sure you're all familiar. ADUs can allow for senior family members or recent college graduates to return to Goffstown and stay for as long as is necessary or they desire without fundamentally changing the character or property of the town. While Goffstown already allows ADUs, I'd like to get the board's input on a few suggested zoning amendments and make it easier for residents to construct ADUs, allowing for the possibility for more residents to continue to live and age in place in Goffstown. Reducing the barriers to build ADUs will help students return to and stay in Goffstown and will allow longtime senior residents to continue to age in town and enjoy the wonderful benefits that we provide. These important benefits come at a relatively low cost for the town. Currently, ADUs are required to match construction materials and the style of the property, and this requirement should stay. This allows the town to grow organically without changing the look or character of the town, especially in agriculture and residential 1 and 2 zones. Goffstown will be able to allow residents to stay in town and provides alternative housing options instead of apartment buildings or several multifamily builds. Many residents appreciate the charm of the village and the open spaces of the conservation and agricultural zones, and ADUs allow for increased living capacity without any major alterations to the character within those zones. All of this can actually be accomplished with relatively minor changes to the current ordinance related to ADUs. By removing barriers and informing residents, more can be discreetly built. Consider altering the requirements for a no front-facing door to allow for a front-facing door on the same horizontal plane and style as the initial front door, which will allow for increased inflexibility when building ADUs. Depending upon the style of a single-family house, there may be more than one entrance at the front and looks as though it belongs as part of the design. Additionally, the town could consider to allow for detached ADUs that fits in with the look and feel of the neighborhood that they are proposed in. Many houses have detached garages or other buildings on the property that could be discreetly converted to ADUs with low construction costs. In fact, there already have been several detached ADUs in towns that have been granted through variances. Finally, modifying the impact fees for the construction of ADUs could significantly reduce the cost of entry when building an ADU. Although they have 2 bedrooms, they're usually only large enough for 1 bedroom, and those who live in them are usually recent graduates or an elderly family member. By reducing but not eliminating more expensive impact fees, more people will be encouraged to build ADUs and pay the fees they might not be currently paying. Reducing the impact fees will have a limited negative impacts on both the areas that they target. Analysis of enrollment over the last 10 years at Goffstown High School showed a slight decrease in the number of enrollments. While the initial impact fee will be lower, this can be solved by reducing the barriers to entry for building ADUs, and as more are built, the impact fee will be collected. A slight reduction in school enrollment will also mean that each student will have more access on a per dollar basis, meaning that the town collects impact fees and enrollment declines. Schools will have more money to fund themselves and spend on students, providing higher quality outcomes for them. Making these proposed changes will help keep Goffstown competitive in attracting new families and talent from surrounding areas. Currently, the New Hampshire Housing Authority highlights nearby Hollis and Warner as models for their ADU ordinances. Being flexible will attract new residents due to the unique offerings Goffstown has, and reformed ADU regulations will help attract more people to Goffstown. Outside of New Hampshire, ADUs have been utilized in some of the nation's hardest hit housing markets. In Portland, Oregon, the ADU program has allowed for a new generation to enter neighborhoods, find well-paying jobs, build a savings, and eventually buy a house on their own. With all that said, I know I went over a lot, there's just some of the ideas to keep seniors and recent graduates in Goffstown without changing the character of the town. My goal today is simply to gather feedback from the board to determine your interest in these ideas and the best way to proceed. And I'd like to propose 3 questions for each of you. 1, does the board have interest in reducing the barriers to building ADUs in Goffstown? 2, do these proposals sufficiently address the needs of the community? And 3, would the board be interested in receiving formal proposals in the future to vote regarding on ADUs? And at this time, I welcome your questions and feedback.
Thank you for that presentation. Just before I open it up to more questions from board members, do you know how many applications for ADUs Goffstown has had, say, over the last 2-year period?
I know it's been relatively low, so I have the total number of ADUs that are included in the town. It's somewhere around 100, but I know the applications for them, especially over the last 2 years, is relatively low and usually for existing homes who are looking to expand.
Okay. And do you know any that have been denied?
I know, off the top of my head, I don't. I know there is always discussion. Like, for example, I know the zoning board recently approved the detached ADU at their last meeting, but it took 3 meetings to go through that process. So my goals with these proposals are to simply reduce some of the barriers so that it takes up less of the board's time and less of the builder's time.
Thank you. Comments or questions from board members? David?
Well, Connor did an excellent summary of the conditions which lead us to this situation. And Connor, I've heard all of those conditions over the last 2 years from various other venues. So you're right on.
Thank you.
Those are things that we need to address and be concerned about. And then are the solutions the right solutions that you're offering?
It's good to hear.
Other members, Tim?
So Connor, when you suggest amend section 522 to allow detached ADUs, on what kind of information do you have that leads you to make that request? Is it less expensive to do that, or what makes it work?
It's the increased flexibility. In a lot of cases, people might have an additional structure on their property that could potentially qualify to be a detached ADU, but currently it's much harder for them to get approval for that under the current ordinance. Like things like a detached garage or even potentially a barn or just any other removed structure. And by doing that, it also by not having to plan for an addition on the house or spend additional time figuring out the best way to get it through the different ordinances or committees, you'd be able to save in both construction and planning costs from the perspective of the consumer.
Well, did you go beyond the construction cost? Did you go into things like what DES requires and all that? Have you reviewed that information?
Briefly.
I mean,
Unfortunately, it's not my area of expertise at the moment.
I would just say that if someone wants to convert a garage or a barn to an ADU, they're gonna have to get state approval for a septic system if they're not within the town sewer system. And that can be very expensive to construct those types of things. Plus, they have to meet all the life safety codes for the new structure they wanna build and move into. Sometimes I don't know if it's more expensive or less expensive to do that. I don't have the information on that.
Yeah, well, and this, like I said, this is all about just doing our best to provide as much flexibility for people in town. So I know for accessory dwelling units, the state ADU ordinance requires that a new septic system has to be in place if the current septic system doesn't meet requirements or needs to be upgraded.
I see.
Other than that, the septic system is not required to be changed. Now, there are towns that currently don't meet that requirement, so those are obviously getting litigated. But for them, if they have the ability to not change the sewer system, they wouldn't necessarily be required to do that. And there are exceptions to all of these where it might make more sense for people to, even if they have a detached garage, it would make more sense for them to include an attached ADU. But there are also instances where it could potentially be easier for them to include a detached ADU, and we just want to make it as streamline the process as easily for them as we can.
And
Go ahead.
the second thing on your suggested proposed changes would reduce sewage. The sewer commission did cut the accessibility fee in half for ADUs.
And I did hear about that, which is
Connor, you might be interested to know that Member Redmond is also on the sewer commission,
So is member
as
Pierce.
is Member Pierce. So,
I did know about that, and
Okay.
and that's good news because that was actually at the moment, an impact fee for an ADU could be as high as just under $9,000 within Goffstown, which is a prohibiting factor for a lot of people in town.
That's not just the school impact fee. You have school written down. It's also public works.
Yep, public works,
Fire and
recreation,
safety.
roads, exactly.
So you do know that there's and anyone over a certain age can apply for a waiver for impact fees through this board here, so there is a waiver process to eliminate impact fees.
Exactly, and those programs should definitely stay in place. But by reducing some of these impact fees, recreation, roads, and public safety are generally lower cost when compared to the sewer, and the school fee is also it's one of the higher impact fees that are on here with $2,403. But the sewer district fee is flat out $2,500. But if it's over 600 square feet, that price bumps up to, at least on the old one, bumped up to 5,000. I know you guys have
We
cut
changed that.
which is excellent.
Now,
That's been changed.
that was changed to
we-
anything
put in our s-
650 square feet or lower.
We put in our sewer use ordinance, that we're recommending a change that will, our sewer, accessibility fee for that style structure is gonna mirror whatever the zoning regulation is at the time. We're not putting a hard and fast number in our sewer ordinance.
Okay.
So we're going to go with whatever the zoning goes with, we're gonna mirror that number. So that actually got squared away.
That makes
I
sense.
know you asked about that a long time ago.
Gail?
Last night's, not last night, what's today? Tuesday night zoning board meeting was a good example of what Connor just explained. The ZBA did approve a detached ADU. Didn't particularly care to do it because of the distance, but it made all the sense in the world, because it would have been quite difficult to add on to the property because of where different things were located around the house and the design of the house itself. And they had an existing garage that was already 2 stories. That would cost them $10,000 to improve it to an ADU versus adding on to the house would have cost them $40,000. And the financial aspect of it was a hardship. So I can understand where Connor's coming from on that. And it makes a lot of sense when there are certain things in line to do it. Not, I wouldn't say a blanket approval for every detached ADU, but I think some things in line for it would certainly warrant it.
Thank you, Gail. Other members with comments?
He's asking to have it taken out of the zoning hands. He's asking to have it become part of our regulations, which does not require it to go to the zoning board of
Right,
adjustment.
that's, yep. Anybody members on the phone?
You're not asking that, right?
And I would just like to clarify, we're not asking that that get removed from the ZBA. It's just that we'd be, instead of prohibiting them, they would be allowed, because since you still have to petition, or you still have to get approval for an ADU within the town, it's not by right, it's by variance.
He's asking that you don't need a variance, that you wouldn't
We
need
know,
a
we,
variance.
Tim and I, yeah, no, we
It is-
understand that.
It's a special exception for an ADU.
But for the detached, you have to.
Yeah, you would have to get a variance.
Right.
And the impact fees are just under 4,000. There's at the very bottom, when you convert a single family by adding a ADU, I think it's 3,800. It's actually more than a 2-family, which is weird to me, when you convert it.
Okay. Maybe that needs to be looked at. Members with,
May I be heard?
Jim.
Jim.
go ahead.
I don't want to beat this because it's a concept. There's nothing before us, but we have learned through time. If you change zoning to meet an immediate need, the structures that are then created last a long time. And to the extent we loosen or change standards to promote a certain kind of structure or dwelling, because there's a need now, that will be there for a while. And for example, on the ADUs, we intentionally did not have detached dwellings because that's really increasing your density, not just of living units, but of buildings in areas that we otherwise want to control density. So that's why we had it as an attached structure. These were referred to as the mother-in-law apartments, but then when mom dies, mother-in-law dies, what happens to them? And if it's a separate structure, suddenly you have really a separate house on a lot. So I think we want to weigh those before we go down this. I recognize there's a need, and some of us are old enough to see some value there, but have a long-term view when you do that on what the consequences are on the look of our town, the effect on other property. I think there's a little more to this than just the argument in favor that I think we would need to waive.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree and understand your concern there. I think actually the biggest positive with ADUs as a whole is the fact that, and the town ordinance already requires this, is that they're required to match the look and the feel within the community. So while I definitely hear your concerns about density, and I think it might be useful to look at, specific zones where detached ADUs could or could not be allowed if the board looked favorably upon something along those lines. But I think that the risk of fundamentally changing the character of the town, and from what we've seen from towns across the country, has actually been relatively low. Even in towns that don't necessarily require the detached ADU to follow the specific characteristics of the town, the house, and the property.
Other members? Thank you, Connor, for bringing this. That it can sort of, I'll note that after our application, we're gonna discuss upcoming meetings. And indeed, zoning amendments are on the calendar. November 9th is the first day that proposed zoning amendments can be accepted. And we will be looking to do our own zoning amendments and schedule a workshop. So, Connor, your presentation is certainly timely for this board's discussion. Do you think that you might propose a draft language for a zoning ordinance? I'm not, as Jim said, we don't have anything before us, so.
Exactly, and that was the purpose of me coming here today in this manner, is I specifically didn't want to propose anything. I mostly wanted to get feedback from the board and the members that are on it to just kind of gauge interest, and I think I have some good working notes. At the moment, I'm not 100% sure either way if I'll come back with something.
Okay.
I definitely would like to, because I think that this is a solution that could really help the town of Goffstown, as I said, without fundamentally changing it, which I think is really important to everyone in this room and everyone in the community. But there is a real need for something along these lines, as things continue to get more expensive. And, pushing the problem down the road will eventually lead to a waterfall of other issues that we can avoid by addressing this now.
Okay, thank you very much for coming. Do you have any other questions for us?
No, I am all set. Thank you guys very much for allowing me to speak. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Connor?
Thanks,
Thank you.
We still have one more action item, Bob, on before.
We have an applicant that I want to deal with before that. I don't think nobody is here for number 4, are they, as far as correspondence and action items?
No, I have one in butter.
Yeah, no, I
on
want to
that don't know
go to
what
the
this
new
for, but-
business, and then we'll
Yep.
come back to this. All right, we are now on to new business. Tonight, for new business, we have a proposal in regards to map 4, lot 79. This is located at 3 Hunter Court. This is in regards to a completeness review waiver request of the development regs and conditional use permit hearing for a proposal to allow a second driveway that does not meet the 50-foot distance requirements for a driveway to be located near an intersection, street, or right-of-way. The proposed second driveway is located 32 feet from Mountain Road. This is actually 7.4.2 section of the Goffstown zoning ordinance and Appendix A, Section 8C3 of the Goffstown Development Regulations. The owners are Thomas and Christy Knopf. The property, as I said, is located at 3 Hunter Court, so there is a waiver requested for having only, is it 32 or 38 feet of distance, but in any case, less than the 50 feet required, and a conditional use permit. So Joanne, you want to take us through this?
Sure, let me just get the map out here. Okay, so, can everybody hear me with this mask? So, the Knowlts live on Hunter Court, and recently they decided to build a garage. And while the garage was being built, they had this roughed-in driveway that they were using for the construction vehicles. Because of where the house is located, there's not much traffic on Hunter because it's a dead end, but because of where the house is located in the driveway, when cars would come by, they didn't want to be blocking close up near the intersection with the construction vehicles. So they roughed in this driveway. When they were all finished and complete, they decided that they actually liked the driveway and would like to turn it into a horseshoe, which really makes sense because rather than exiting from that driveway closer to the intersection, which is the 38 feet, the other driveway is further down, so they could do the horseshoe and come out the other side, so they would be further away from the intersection. So it's really a simple project, and they just need a conditional use permit in order to gain approval to be able to do this. They've answered the conditional use questions on page 24 is the conditions that are required for the conditional use. And in the packet, in their, what was that? In their application packet, they have answered the questions. The application is complete. Staff recommends there are no regional impacts. And we only included 2 conditions.
All right, I allowed myself and for you to get a little bit ahead of ourselves. This application,
always do that.
as soon as you said it, right, you knew what was gonna happen. So this application is complete and there is no regional impact?
Correct.
I'd like to make a motion to find the application complete and ready for review, and there are no regional impacts and no waivers requested. Joanne?
So yes, there is a waiver requested.
Okay, so the waiver,
Yeah, I'll second it.
the waiver for discussion purposes only.
It's been seconded by Phil. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Tim?
Yes?
David?
Yes,
Dale?
Yes.
Peter?
Yeah,
Jim?
Yes.
I vote yes. Phil?
yes.
Okay. Joanne, I'm just a little confused from that presentation. The applicant did a great application with pictures. So which is the new driveway leg? The one closest to the road?
Yeah, the one closest to the intersection.
All right, so what is that drainage in the middle of the driveway?
Can I approach Patty? I may be able to answer.
It's in Eric's report.
Okay, all right, we'll wait till we get to that point. I know you're here, which is why we went.
It's in Eric Gustafson's report,
Right.
Barbara. It's a town drain.
Right,
Yeah.
but still, I'm sort of, because driveways eventually get paved, so I'm sort of wondering about it.
Well, he said he'd have to adjust
Right.
it and pave around it.
Okay. All right, so the applicant has addressed all the issues as far as the town staff is concerned.
Yes.
All right, does anybody have any questions of staff before we hear from the applicant? Sarah, you all set?
Can I mention one other thing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just in case anyone is confused. There is sort of something that appears like a third driveway, but really it just is just going back into the, is it the water meter? It's a right-of-way for the water company to go back there. So it's not really used as a driveway, it's just an access for water, the water company.
All right, I didn't notice that, so now you just made it more confusing to me.
Would that be farther in Hunter Court, Joanne?
Yes.
All right, anybody online with questions?
Where did you see that, Joanne? In one of the photos?
Eric included it in his
Oh,
report.
I did read about Eric's report, okay.
All right,
And I have
Thanks.
Tom Nault online too. And Tom, you're not muted, just letting you know.
okay.
Nope, I'm aware of that.
No swearing, Tom.
No, I won't.
He may have to leave. He is covering, actually. He got hit with an overtime shift, so that's why I'm here.
Oh,
Representing both of us, so if he drops, it's because he's
he's
in
gone.
Concord and has to go on a call.
Yes, he's gone. All right, why don't you tell us your name for the record?
Christy Nault, and I'm a homeowner of the 300 Court property that we're discussing. We proposed this driveway. Again, as was stated, it was cut originally for construction vehicles, for the foundation and for the contractor for the garage, and then we just started using it. And it's become one of those things that was like, well, this would really be nice. And we do have a neighbor that has a horseshoe driveway diagonal across from us already. So we're like, you know what? Let's see what, Then we started to research, realized we were short on the distance from the intersecting road, which is Mountain Road. We did some investigating on our own, pulling cars out and making sure that, even with that driveway, if someone were to exit that side, it would not impact having someone stick out onto Mountain Road. There's actually enough clearance, and you'll see in pictures that we there's enough clearance for 2 cars to pull out, and that's, that corner is a little interesting anyway, like, but it allows you to still see both areas. The drainage, in regards to that drain, I don't know if anyone in this room remembers, we had some horrible flooding up on that area back,
2006.
yeah, where things were flooding out, and that's what that drain, it's a runoff drain that was put in, that, you know, has been there for years. You know, we mow over it regularly, and then now, Tom has, contacted, the town and discussed what options could be, you know, to elevate that drain, so that drain would still remain, in that driveway, and if there was any pitches needed, we would be working with the town to make sure that that's accomplished, so that that drain still continues to work as it needs to, because we would hate to have flooding as we did. That was terrible back then.
All right.
Any other questions?
Any other questions from board members before I open this up to public comment? I'm not hearing or seeing any, so at this time I'm going to open this matter up to public comment. This is map 4, lot 79. This is in regards to a request to place a second driveway entrance where less than the required feet is present to the adjoining road. Is there anyone online who would like to speak in regards to this proposal that is not the applicant?
Press star 9, although, Mr. Daniel, I do have you unmuted. I do have one more abutter on.
Is there a
Yes,
Mr.
Dan Jackman.
Dan?
Yeah, neighbor of Tom and Christie's. I don't see a problem at all. We don't really have a lot of traffic on the street, so it's, I don't see how it can impact any problems with it.
Thank you. Is there anybody else on the line who'd like to add their comment during the public hearing? Anybody?
I have one more abutter, but they haven't pressed star 9, and you're not muted if you wanted to speak, so they might be listening for something else.
Okay. All right, if there's no one else who wants to speak in regards to this matter from the public, I'm going to close the public hearing at this point in time. Board members, we have a waiver requested. I just meant to pull out the waiver requirements.
I'm gonna give it to Christie so she can respond. 'cause she
No,
needs-
that's for the conditional use. The waiver is, you can hand it.
Okay, I'll wait till you're ready. What is the waiver request for, Joanne?
The waiver is actually the actual footage.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. You know what's strange about this is like, there's,
I need to know the waiver language. Gail is pointing out.
it's right on page 23.
It is? Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the.
Motion?
It's for section, appendix A, section 8C3.
Finding and associated with the waiver.
It's on page 23.
No, it just states.
No, you're not.
just-
No, it's
You're
not.
looking for a finding?
Well, there's a requirement for the waiver. Right, implementation of the ordinance, the strict application of the,
No, it's not on 23.
would cause a practical hardship, and this will not affect the environment. Jim, I just completely did in our waiver request. Do you have anything to add in a motion to grant the waiver?
I don't.
Okay. Just
I'll make a motion to grant the waiver from section, which sec?
8C3.
8.C.3, Appendix A, requiring 50 feet of distance from the intersection of a town road, reducing it to 38 feet, as the granting of this waiver will not have any negligent impact on the intersection or the neighborhood.
And it will not affect the purpose and
Second.
intent.
And it will not affect the,
Barbara, I'll second that.
Got it, Peter.
not affect the what?
Purpose and intent of the regulation.
Purpose and intent of the regulation.
I believe it's supposed to be 32 feet. I think 38 was edge of pavement, and 32 feet was from the edge of the right-of-way.
I'll amend my motion to 38 32
Two.
feet. 32 feet.
That's why in one place it was 32 and in one place it was 38. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
If I could just say up to 38, because Eric's the one who provided the 38 feet on his drawing.
That's edge of pavement though, but not, the right of ways even, she's even she's, instead of being, she should be closer. She's even, yeah, the edge of the right of way is 32
32.
feet, edge of pavement is 38 feet.
Which number did you want included in the motion to be correct? I got 38 on the print. What do you want, 32?
I would do 32 because that means she's closer than she's supposed to be. If she's.
Well, they're
Am I going
It should be
reverse?
32.
You're reverse.
Their own driveway
Sarah's saying 32.
Okay,
But
we'll,
they're-
we'll go with the engineer, 32.
But their own driveway modification permit says 38 on it. That's what was submitted to the town of Goffstown.
That was,
If you look at Eric's
by Eric.
report, he's,
It says Thomas Arnault at the bottom of the application, not Eric Gustafson.
no, I know
No,
that,
but his
Eric
report.
helped him with it.
Well,
Yeah.
Sarah, do you want to clarify?
Sarah,
So in their drawing, they showed 38 feet from edge of pavement to the edge of their driveway, which is technically correct. But what they are requesting a waiver from specifies the distance from the right of way to their driveway. So the right of way distance to their driveway is 32 feet.
okay, based on the town engineer's statement that it's 32 feet, I'll amend my motion to be 32 feet from the edge of the town right-of-way.
I'll second.
the second stands with Peter. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Tim?
Yes,
David?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Peter?
Yeah.
Jim?
you're gonna have to answer those questions, because you,
I vote yes. Phil?
you have to answer.
Yes.
You can do it briefly.
Yeah, I was gonna
Thank
say.
you. The waiver is granted. The next item before us in regards to allowing this is the conditional use permit. And the applicant has submitted a letter dated 9/17, going through the conditional use permit. So if it's okay, Ms. Nault, because you're here, I'm just gonna ask you, if it meets it and you're gonna just summarize your letter, you don't need to read it
Okay.
word for word.
Okay.
So is this use, that is this second driveway entrance specifically authorized in the ordinance as a conditional use?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And if this is completed as you propose it, is it going to comply with all requirements or specific conditions or standards established for this particular use?
Yes.
And is the use going to be compatible with the neighborhood and with adjoining or abutting uses in the area in which it is to be located?
Yes.
And there's also
There,
another,
yes, we
there's
also
also
have
another horseshoe.
Horseshoe driveway in our neighborhood.
all right. And will the use have a substantial adverse impact on vehicular or pedestrian safety?
No, it actually minimizes any potential, like, it stops us from backing out onto the road. We have room to turn around. So it actually, I think, makes a safer situation for Hunter Court.
You passed, that was the trick question after a couple of yeses. There you go. All right, and will the use have a substantial adverse impact on the appearance and visual quality of the surrounding neighborhood?
Yes. It will definitely make it look finished, and I think with such a
But
large.
it
garage-
won't have a bad if
It won't negatively impact it in any way.
That was the second quick question, okay.
Yeah.
That was a trick question.
Oh,
Just- you
great.
should have answered no.
No.
And then, will the use be adequately serviced by public utilities or community facilities to the extent it's needed? Okay. The applicant said yes. All right, thank you. Is there any other questions or discussion on the conditional use request? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Motion to grant the conditional use request for map 4, lot 79, to construct their second driveway as requested.
Is there a second? It's been seconded by Peter. Is there any further discussion? And is that approval is subject to the driveway modification permit being issued and consulting prior to any paving?
Yes, it has to be to the satisfaction of the DPW.
Any further discussion?
Peter, did you second that, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Peter.
Any further discussion? I'm going to call for the vote. Tim?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Phil?
Yes.
Thank you, you're all set.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome to stay.
You already got offline, just letting you know.
He couldn't take the stress.
All right, Joanne, I think that gets us through all the notice business. We do have another correspondence item in regards to the Paris Auto Body application.
Correct.
Bring us up to date on that.
So, as you all remember, we had the Paris Auto Body site. It was approved with conditions. One of the conditions was that he complete the fence and provide a report of compliance by October 1st, 2020, and then every year thereafter on October 1st. So they've cleaned up, they put the gravel down. DPW and myself have to go out there and do an inspection, but they were supposed to put at least 4 inches of gravel. I don't know if it's 4 inches, but there is gravel down. They moved the 2 storage containers. They're gone. The dumpster itself is not yet fenced in, but the area around it and in between the 2 buildings, the building that's for rent and the automotive building, has been cleaned up, that area in between. The lighting, I still have to look on the plan to make sure that's all been set, and then take a look out in the field. The big thing right now is the fence. The board had allowed Mr. Paris to repair the stockade fence, and I received correspondence from his attorney the other day stating they wanted to put up a chain link fence. The property line that goes between the residential home and the back of their yard, where they have like a row of parking, they wanted to replace that stockade fence, which is in really bad shape, with a chain link, with not using slats, but using some sort of opaque divider of some sort. I don't know, I haven't seen it, I don't know exactly what it looks like. So they were, and then they were going to repair the stockade, the rest of the stockade, the remaining on the abutting line between the storage yard and this residential property, and then on the other side on Patain Street between the back of the storage yard and the Godbout's property. And they wanted to do the chain link around the dumpster. So then they changed their mind just like yesterday. And now they would like to put up new stockade fence between their yard and the Therian's home, the residential home, and repair the remainder of the stockade and still put the chain link around the dumpster. And so the additional request is that not the board, but the town grant them the certificate of occupancy so that the towing company, Jorker, can move in, and they can't do the fence until at least November because the fencing company doesn't have the time right now. So the way they proposed it to me was they would give half the amount of the fence to the fencing company and half the amount to the town, and they thought that would allow them to get their CO. And I explained to them that we really didn't care how much money they gave the fencing company. It's the town that has to have some sort of surety. If they don't build the fence now, we would need the whole surety of the full amount of the cost of the fence. So, they said, the attorney said, well, we can talk and negotiate that. So I guess the biggest question is, the board originally, I was coming here to ask the board, advise the applicant basically that they needed to come back to the board for an amended site plan because the board specifically said repair the stockade fence and they wanted to do chain link. And then they would also have to get a waiver from our regulations because our regulations require wooden fences. But now that they've changed their request, they're basically looking for approval to allow the tenant to move in and for the town to grant them a certificate of occupancy. And in the meantime, none of the fencing would be completed until at least November, and then if we have bad weather, it could go beyond that. And my suggestion to that is either say no or allow them to do this with a full amount of surety for whatever the fencing, not just the new fencing, but repairs of the old fencing should be included in that price.
Discussion. Tim?
The fence was one of the most important elements of this application, and the fence is going to screen the neighbors from the towing yard.
Correct.
Mr. Para, I checked my notes, this was approved on July the 23rd, so they've had months to take care of this, and now in October, they want to get a certificate of occupancy without the fence being fixed. So, in my mind, I say no.
Can I just add one thing that I forgot to mention? When they started to clean up the property, they went to Mr. Therian, the neighbor, and told him that they needed to do something to his property in order for the fence to be repaired. And Mr. Therian said, no, I don't want you touching my property, fix your fence and however you need to do it, but leave my property out of it.
And this is because the fence is almost exactly on the boundary line.
I think it is on the boundary line. So tonight, or today, I should say, Mr. Therian contacted me and asked me, the new fence, now Mr. Paris is willing to put up a new fence on that line. And he asked me, does the new fence go on the property line or does it go further back? And I said, well, we always advise people that we should, I forget what the number of feet is it like 4 or 5, Patty, do you know?
No, they just have to, because you don't require, if it's 6 feet under, there's no permit required, they should leave
Okay.
enough room for maintenance, usually you leave a couple of feet.
Yeah, so you can get on to the other side and do whatever you need to do and you're still on your own
And stay on your own
property.
land.
That was not in the condition of approval, but certainly I could convey that to Mr. Paris, that would be the town's advice. Don't put it back where it was. Now, the Therian's property has the lawn, the grassy area, and then the Paris property is right there and it's all paved. So I don't know how that affects
Well,
this fencing, but
I'm curious why Mr. Para has waited until the last minute to ask for this. Secondly, I hate to punish Mr. Jorker because he's been here in good faith, but it is his landlord that is creating the problem, not the planning board, not us.
Any other board members?
Yeah, I have a comment there, Barbara.
Bill?
Yeah, my concern with this letter that I'm looking at, it starts out with my understanding from Chuck. To me, that's nothing definitive. My understanding from Chuck is that this is what he wanted to do. I mean, we go and we grant this and we find it from Chuck that wasn't what his intent was. I mean, there's nothing definitive. And I tend to agree with Tim. I mean, the way this has been going on, the fence has been the issue. When they came in from the beginning, everybody would have been, everything would have been different if this is what was proposed in the beginning.
Can I just?
Patty wants to add something. Patty?
When they came in and they were talking about the fencing, they did state that they were not able to get the fencing company until October. They said that during the public hearing.
Okay, and what are we now, October?
Yeah, I just wanted.
Okay, so where's the
Well,
fence?
the question was why wasn't it done? They were saying that they weren't gonna be able to do it till at least
Okay,
October.
I'll accept that. Thank you for reminding me.
Joanne, if there was a delay in the construction, was the stockade fence continuing where it is the rest of this consistent with what is there now, or supposed to be there? A chain link around the dumpster and a chain link fence along the front, is all of that consistent with the plan as we approved that?
So the chain link fence around the dumpster was actually supposed to be stockade.
Well, because I asked that because the point of a fence around a dumpster is to shield it, and a chain link fence without even a mention of privacy slats doesn't do that, so I couldn't imagine that was on the plan.
Verbally, they told me that it would have privacy slats, because, not privacy slats, but that other opaque material, because they spoke with the fence company to use stockade, and the fence company didn't recommend using it, for that purpose, because a stockade fence is not as durable, and with it opening.
So that's a change to the plan.
That would be.
Right.
I didn't think that was a big issue, because
Well-
it was just around the dumpster, but
I'm not saying
still-
it's a big issue, I've
Right.
just looked at it, and the way it was phrased in my recollection was not consistent, and so, and this memo doesn't even have the chain link with privacy slats or screening material. Tim?
So it's up to the board to determine if that's a material change that the board needs to act on, or if the planning director can use
Yeah.
discretion.
now the other fence she mentions in the email is the fencing in front of the tow yard.
Right, which is on the Paris property itself,
there's
not on a
fencing-
property line.
Correct, and there's fencing there now. They would be replacing that with new chain link gate.
But it's chain link there now.
Correct.
And they were supposed to install privacy slats into that fence as part of the approval.
The way-
Yes.
Yes, and the way they explained it to me, the fencing company recommended this other material.
Well, and then he should have consulted his fencing company before he came to the planning board and asked for something definitive, in my opinion. He asked for privacy slats, then that's what he puts in. Whether his fencing company, if he doesn't want to do that, he needs to come back to the board and ask for a change to the plan.
Other board members?
Everybody's sick of it.
I know. I guess given just the history of this application and my concern about being consistent with our zoning ordinance and the screening between commercial and residential, I am sort of leaning toward taking the recommendation of our planning staff and requiring a surety for the cost of the fence. And note that the chain link, I think that the chain link around the dumpster is not a material change, and that can be left to the discretion of the planning department, because the dumpster where it's located on the site really isn't visible. So, I mean, that's where I sort of stand on this, and privacy slats work pretty well. I think they work better than the material. that
Barbara,
they
can
put-
I speak?
Peter?
So, as I live around the corner from this location, he's done a tremendous amount of work there, and I think on cleaning it up, it looks better than it has in years. And if there's a way we can work with the person, I think we really should. And if it's called a surety bond or a surety deposit or whatever, I think that's, and they're offering to do that, I think that's the way we ought to go.
David?
Yeah, I agree with the surety payment to the town should fully cover the improvements that are yet to be done. If there's, additional, that 50% deposit, that's a completely different issue to contractors. But the town should get 100% of the cost of the expected work.
Do you think the chain link fence around the dumpster is a material change or not?
It's not a material change.
All right, can I have the opinion of people on the line, please? Peter?
Before you do that, can I just ask a question?
Sure.
If you're.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you're asking for the surety, are we going to accept his fencing company saying, okay, here's the bill, this is the true amount of this fencing and the repair?
I don't know what other choice we have.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? It's already paid half the bill, and he's gonna give us the other half.
No, he hasn't
Why
paid,
would-
Peter, he hasn't
Yeah.
paid anything.
what?
He's saying most people require 50% upfront. He has no contract with this fencer that he's working with. The language from his lawyer is since
I don't have a-
most
I don't have a problem with that. Then we tell him he has to have something that shows that he's given his contractor 50% that ties him into the project, and then we surety the other 50%. We make that the requirement. I mean, if he's saying that's what he's gonna do, let's put something in place that makes him do that.
All right, do you think the chain link fence is a material change?
No, I don't.
I meant as to the dumpster, Jim.
Barbara, I have no idea about the chain link fence. I don't have the plans in front of me, and I'm not visualizing. But what do we do with the surety? Typically, we accept that so we can go on to a road and make improvements once the town accepts it as a condition before it's completed. Here, it's an improvement on private property.
Correct.
We have no right of access to it, so we can't go on and build it. So I'm not sure what the surety does. Are we just holding some money to give him an incentive to build it? We cannot tell him to allow a fence company onto the property or us, and we don't want to be building fences on people's property. So play out what happens if they don't complete it. What do we do with that money?
Okay, Phil.
Well, there's a few things. The question about the substantial change around the dumpster. I don't have the plans in front of me. I don't know exactly. I wasn't at the meeting when it was approved, but if it provides the same type of screening that the other fence, the approved fences, I don't have a problem with that, but I don't even have a sample to look at of what it is. And my concern is we get applicants and we have an understanding, or we think we have an understanding of what something's going to look like. And after the approval is done, the project is completed, it doesn't look like what we thought. We don't have anything in front of us that's saying, this is the sample of what we're going to put up. This affects many of the abutters. We don't have anything here for input from abutters on a change that's been an issue. I have nothing definitive. The concern that I have is when you have to have deadlines, whether you got a closing on a house, whether you're looking for a CO, you got deadlines that you got to meet. You're dealing with a company that wants a fence, or whether you're dealing with a company that's going to put in a well so that you can have your closing and have your water tested by that closing date, everybody's got to perform. I mean, this conversation with the fence company saying, my deadline is such because I need a CO by then, that's what I need to be done. They should all be working for the deadline for the CO. You know, I'd like to get this done. I'd like to get this thing completed so that I'd rather see the new fence there. I'd rather see the new fence put where there's adequate room to service it in front. That'd be fantastic. I just have concerns. And again, what I have in front of me that I'm looking at on my computer screen says, my understanding from Chuck is that he changed his mind. I have nothing from somebody who I'm assuming that this is their client saying, my client wants to install the new fence. There's nothing definitive here.
Thank you. Tim?
So if this board is going to consider a surety in some dollar value. Do we still have any kind of an, account with these folks for, fees and services rendered by the town? What do you call that, at a
The engineering escrow,
escrow? Do you have an escrow account with these folks right now?
I believe we do.
Well, if we do, then I think we should instruct DPW to call 2 reputable fence companies and get an estimate based on the footage of that site to get a price for what a fence would cost, so that if they come up with a surety, that we are going to have an adequate amount of surety to do the job. But of course, Jim's already made a
Right.
point.
Jim-
It seems like a moot point to accept a surety.
Okay,
Jim.
Barbara, and to go forward like that, we're going to have some type of an agreement, a
Yeah.
something from the property owner that's going to allow it to be done. Without that, we don't
Right.
have the right to do it.
Right.
I agree. Phil.
Okay, Jim, do you want to add anything to the very real issue?
Right now, we are asking, on Tim's suggestion, our DPW to spend time, it should be spending on town matters
Right.
in order to solve a problem
We're trying
of
to
a
solve it.
development on a private lot where they haven't performed. Why do we want to spend town resources on this?
Well, we have an escrow account, Jim. We could bill them for it.
Oh, no, but you're asking the DPW to make calls.
I didn't ask them to do anything. I
We
said,
actually do not.
I said.
All right, all right.
I said
Okay,
if the
this is-
board was gonna consider a
Everybody
surety.
stop. This is part of the problem in running this hybrid meeting when things get going. I am I started to take a poll as to the issue of the dumpster, but frankly, I don't think we get there. The issue before us is a request by the applicant to provide a surety of some amount in case, because it's sort of a fence company estimate in the letter, not a contract, that Jim points out we would really have no ability to direct any work for. So this is the first meeting of the month. And I guess what I'm going to do is to ask anybody if they are inclined to make a motion to accept the proposal as presented by the applicant through their attorney. Tim, are you making a motion?
I'm gonna make a motion to deny the request from the attorney that is being, presented to us tonight.
Is there a second?
There is no escrow. Sarah, just-
I will second that.
Okay, okay, we just got clarification, I don't know if anybody heard, but Sarah just texted Joanne and, let her know there is no escrow anywhere for this applicant at this point in time.
It came in as a site plan amendment. They paid engineering fees when the part of the application, but we did not hold.
Thank you,
them as
Sarah.
escrow.
All right, is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Tim,
I'm in favor of the motion.
David,
Yes.
Gail,
Yes.
Peter,
No.
Jim,
Yes.
chair votes yes, Phil,
Yes.
okay.
who seconded that motion?
Jim Raymond seconded it.
Okay, thanks.
I'm with Peter, the applicant has done a lot, it took a while to get the second trailer off, he did, he's brought in stuff. But he's got another meeting in October they can come forward to, if there's a fence company out there that can do the work. There's a couple of weeks left to November 1st, so,
I think the deadline for that meeting is tomorrow. No. the
well, I
letters
mean,
have to
we got a letter in for discussion tonight that
could
we
be another
addressed.
action item.
It can be another action item,
It doesn't have to be hearing.
right, no, I'm hoping that he comes in and there's a contract and they're starting work, and so at that point, if it becomes sort of a moot issue, I think that's pretty clear, this request was before us, because as of November 1st, there wouldn't have been anything done.
And he's also overdue on the October deadline. It's the October 1st was the deadline.
For the current,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Tim?
So if the applicant was to come forward with an action item at the next meeting, a good faith effort with a fence company, we could make a verbal vote to extend that November 1st deadline by a period of,
October 1st.
well,
He's already
To
beyond it.
November 1st.
it says November 1st in our paperwork here.
That was the request.
The request.
Oh, Well, they can still ask for a request, a short-term request, if they have a good faith
Right,
effort put forward to replace or repair the fence.
an actual contract. I don't know that good faith is applicable in this particular case.
With a
Though they've been
specific
making-
starting date.
And
Uh,
just to address the abutters' concern, they were not in favor of having a chain link fence next to their home.
Well, I
So-
don't think it doesn't sound to me like the board was considering it,
Okay.
so, okay. All right, we have some, that completes the notice business and correspondence and action items. We have to address issues of our upcoming meetings. Those of us here have a print copy. You should have been emailed a master plan update. I would like board members to take a look at it, to discuss it. There are a couple of big squares on that could use some input, and we're gonna discuss it at our next meeting in October. Tim, did you have some input?
Yeah, I would like to take up the suggestion for the November 5th meeting that we combine those two meetings to one and cancel one of the meetings if we can. Or can we not cancel a meeting?
You could do your workshop on the next one. I haven't received any applications to notice, so there's no,
So we don't have any notices for the 22nd?
nope.
So we could eliminate that meeting at the chair's discretion, and we could combine our master plan update and a workshop for the November 5th meeting if the chair's deemed it.
All right, board members?
I'm in favor of that.
So, I didn't understand.
Basically cancel the November 5th meeting and do it all
No,
on the
can we
20th.
cancel the October 22nd meeting?
No, the November 5th.
Oh, the November 5th meeting?
Yeah,
That's the one you were talking about.
Well, which one do we not have
That's too
applications
soon.
for right now?
neither one. The November 5th was a workshop where you
But do
wouldn't
we,
have
oh, there was
applications.
no other application scheduled for that night?
Well, we haven't passed the deadline yet, so we don't.
So that's why, I'm worried that someone might fight an,
That's not a regular meeting. November
Oh.
5th, you normally do not
That's
meet.
right, it would be
thank you for
nice.
that.
That's why I'm saying, do you want to get rid of the workshop and just do it at your regular meeting on October 22nd?
Except,
Absolutely.
are you talking about a zoning workshop? Because we haven't even looked at it yet, so I don't know that we'd be
I
ready
don't know
for
what the workshop
October
is.
22nd.
Right,
Do
that's,
you have your chairs?
that's the issue.
It's all on there.
Well, you decide, you're the chair. It's chair's decision.
What day in November you said we're having a meeting?
The 5th,
Nor,
The other one?
the 9th. The 5th and the 9th, Phil. I
no,
think.
no.
12th,
The
excuse me.
12th is, okay. We have
My mistake.
one other meeting in October, in 2 weeks from tonight, that is currently scheduled to go over the master plan. At this time, we have no other business. The applicant that requested to continue to that date, we have continued to an indefinite date to be renoticed. So we have no applications on the October 22nd meeting. Our first regular meeting in November is the 12th. The second meeting is on Thanksgiving, so that meeting gets canceled. So we have one meeting scheduled in November. We normally schedule an additional meeting in November to review zoning amendments proposed by the planning board, independent of anything that might be submitted. And so that is proposed to be November 5th. Because there are no applications, Patty is suggesting that we combine it to October 22nd, where the master plan update was to be gone over. Joanne is concerned that given the staff workload, which has been fairly high with some of these applications over the last couple of months, that staff will not be ready with definitive language for the October 22nd master plan update. If in fact we have no applications in for the 22nd, can we just combine, cancel that meeting and meet on November 5th and do both of them?
Yes.
And that way, that would give staff sufficient time for some proposed zoning. Okay. And then November 12th, we do have an item of business, and of course, the time period hasn't ended for applications.
And this would give the board a little bit more time to take a better look at the master plan.
Good answer.
board and staff.
Then staff, you're right.
And the deadline for October 22nd's gone by, so there's nothing.
All right, so I think the chair would prefer to cancel the October 22nd meeting and schedule a meeting on November 5th, which would be a workshop on zoning changes and master plan workshop. And will we be having somebody from Southern New Hampshire planning at that meeting? Did they want to attend, or are we going to do that without them?
I can ask, but we are out of contract over budget with them, so,
Not over budget out of our pocket.
no, their pocket.
Right. I don't know that we need anybody here for that if we're just going through
Well,
it.
it'll be a much short-winded meeting if they're not here.
Yes.
All right, so that's the, board members, no meeting on the 22nd, meeting on the 5th and 12th of November. We will then have meetings in December on the 10th and 17th, as is now scheduled. So that is our agenda going forward, not hearing any objection. I do want to make an announcement, and I apologize, I meant to make it at the beginning of the meeting. Member David Pierce has been shining bright the last couple of months in regards to his work here on behalf of the community. He recently did work on a grant that was received for the Goffstown Rail Trail. If you need to write a grant in Goffstown, David Pierce is the person to see. He has written more grant applications for that rail trail in the past few years than I think any other department head, and I do mean other department heads in town, and he does a terrific job, which is evidenced by the award of grants to the community. So thank you to David Pierce for all his continuing work on that behalf. He continues to work on paper and in person. I drove by him with his handy little trailer loading brush last weekend, clearing out the rail trail, so he really goes above and beyond. And he was formally recognized by that. I am proud to announce that the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission recognized David at its annual meeting for his work in planning on regional issues and on the rail trail with the Raymond E. Clausen Award. It is an annual award given to a member of, individual in a member community who has gone over and above what anybody might reasonably expect in regards to planning and associated activities in their community. David was the recipient.
So it's for volunteers, where the other award is for staff.
And, you know, it was a virtual meeting that David actually wasn't even attending because he was busy on something and had to be called by staff
Were
to
you
say,
picking up brush somewhere?
"Where are you, David?" And he logged in late
Writing a grant.
so that he could get the award. So congratulations to David Pierce for that award, and thank you for all the work.
Thank you, Barbara.
David is also working on another project for UNH Cooperative Extension in the town. They're looking to develop an app for the trails, and they want to include the businesses along the way, so that if you wanted to go get a sandwich or something, you just look on the app, and David has been very instrumental in helping them develop that.
Thank you, David. Patty?
I have someone online that's requested to speak.
It's fine, do it.
Night.
I got here at like 8 because I figured.
There's someone online, though, that's flagged asking to speak. They're muted. They're not, that's not them talking. They're unmuted now.
I'm gonna unmute them. This is Barbara Griffin. The meeting is essentially over. Can I help you?
Yes, Barbara, this is Mark Herring. I just didn't know if it was open to public on the fence thing. I don't want to belabor it, but just wanted to weigh in if possible.
We're done with that discussion, actually. Thanks for listening and
Okay.
calling in, but essentially the request was denied, and we'll see what the applicant does.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I do want, can I ask clarification for the December 10th date? When I was asked by an applicant if we're
that's right, you
allowing
did.
them to go on, if we're allowing any applications to be taken on that date along with the first zoning amendment public hearing?
You mean petitions you're talking about?
No, an actual application. That's usually the first zoning amendments hearing is your proposed changes, and then the second one is the ones when the petitions come in.
Okay.
But it's actually Sudaka was looking at submittal dates, and they said if they can't make the November 12th date, were we open to allowing them to come in on the December 10th meeting date? And that's,
I don't know that I have an issue with it, but they're gonna be
We don't-
after the zoning.
in case like we don't have a lot of things on, if we know.
Well, isn't December 9th the last day to accept them, according to your work here?
No, that's
No.
usually a workshop on what we will talk about on the 5th. We're gonna talk about zoning amendments on November 5th, and so we have a public hearing on those on December 10th, should we go forward with any of them.
And what are you asking about the December 10th date, Patty?
If an applicant submits an application, can they get on to the December 10th date? Because you only will have those two meeting dates in December,
To discuss their application?
their application. If not just do just strictly zoning amendments, allow an applicant to come in. I was asked that, and I said I'd get clarification.
I'm okay with it.
Barbara, may I be heard?
David,
Jim.
I'm sorry, Jim, go ahead.
676-4, Roman numeral 1, small c1. The board at the next regular meeting or within 30 days following delivery of the application, which notice can be given. I read that as meaning we can't defer a acceptance hearing on an application for more than 30 days. So we can for 30 days, but if they come in, so there's not 30 days, there's more than 30 days before the December meeting, I think we need to have them in the November meeting.
She didn't think she'd be ready for the November meeting, so she was asking, can she submit an application for acceptance for the December 10th meeting?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
Submit an application, Patty?
Yeah,
All right,
just,
particularly if it's an acceptance,
we have it posted as zoning amendments, public hearing only. So she was asking, can an application get on that meeting, or does she have to wait until December 17th? So that's what
But what I'm asking is if on December 9th is the last day to accept amended petitions,
we have public hearings in January on those.
on the petitions are done in January.
Tim,
Okay.
this is the.
that's fine, don't
We
explain.
do two
No,
public
no,
Don't
hearings.
explain. I don't wanna know.
All right, the answer is yes.
Okay,
Good
thank you.
job.
I'm just making an executive decision, the answer is yes. Is there any other business to come before the board tonight?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Peter seconds, I'm going to call the roll. David,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Gail,
Yes.
Jim Raymond.
Jim,
Peter.
Peter.
Dave.
I wrote yes.
Al Devanza.
Phil, we are adjourned,
Yep.
everyone. Thank you
Yes.
very much.
I was so confused with your